It is new bike day, and this is the FE Freedare Saiga. And this bike has some pretty unique features, especially when it comes to safety and making sure your bike doesn't get stolen. So now let's take a look at it. Let's talk about some of the features this Saiga has to offer. One of the first things that sets this bike apart from the rest is that it has smart app control. The smart app control on this bike includes GPS tracking of the bike and an anti-theft system, which is great, especially if you live in a sketchy area. Plus, the bike is UL 2849 certified and UL 2271 certified. This bike also has a removable battery built into the frame right here. You get two sets of keys for the battery. All you got to do, stick them in, give it a turn, and right here you've got a little button. Push that button. Make sure you don't just let the battery fall out because there's nothing stopping it. Not too heavy, but it fits perfectly in the bike and it makes the bike look awesome. I honestly love e-bikes that have the battery integrated into the frame here. It's a very sleek design. This is a 48 volt system, so it's not going to be the quickest or the torquiest system or the fastest, but that's all right. And when it comes to the battery on here, like I mentioned, it is 48 volts and it's a 20 amp hour battery. So now let's talk about some of the specs that this bike has to offer. When it comes to the throttle, it has a thumb throttle on the right side. I do personally prefer the twist throttle, but that's all right. A thumb throttle works just as good. It has a 750 watt Bafang rear hub motor, and Bafang is one of the better brands when it comes to these rear hub motors. And you can also ride it for long distances without putting on any pressure. This thing can do 90 miles with pedal assist. You definitely won't be able to reach 90 miles the way that I ride. The brakes on this bike are Tektro hydraulic brakes, and I love to see hydraulic brakes because hydraulic brakes are just so much better than mechanical brakes. There's no squish to them, and hydraulic brakes on an e-bike are a must. I believe it has 150 millimeter rotors on here, and the shifter is your typical 7-speed Shimano shifter. And when it comes to the assembly of this bike, it's very easy. All you gotta do is attach the front handlebars, put the front wheel on, as well as the headlight, front fender if you do get the front fender, rear rack. But now let's talk about the suspension on this bike. It does lack rear suspension and it also doesn't have seat post suspension. So you should know that before purchasing this bike. But it still rides pretty smooth in my opinion. And when we go on our test ride, we'll definitely test out the suspension. But we've got a front fork here, which you can actually adjust right here. It doesn't look like there's any name brand forks on here. You've got the reflectors here on the wheel. You got the reflectors there on the wheel. One of the things that I think is more important to have on an e-bike, and that is the derailleur guard right here. So that way, if you knock your bike over or anything happens or you get bumped there, your derailleur is not going to get damaged. It's a silver chain, and you've also got a single-sided chain guard right up front here, so it's not double-sided, which in my opinion all bikes should have a double-sided chain guard. Not a big deal because I don't really pedal any of my e-bikes. I prefer to ride around in style with a throttle. The fenders you get metal, and the rear light that comes with it is not hardwired, so this light you actually gotta turn on yourself with a little switch right here. Kind of wish it was hardwired so that when you hit the brakes, your brake light comes on. We've got the control system, pretty typical control system. I've seen a few just like this, very easy to use. You got the power button, you've got the plus and the minus, you've got the headlights, and you got the information button. And then you've got the very nice display right here. I personally love this display. Very easy to read. You've got a power level right down here, then you got the speed. Let's tilt this thing up. Let's see what it looks like. So you can see that power level on the bottom, and this thing caps out at 28 miles an hour. But overall, I really like the screen on this e-bike. The bike also just looks super sick in my opinion, and by sick I mean cool. It looks really cool. In case you don't read my lingo. Got their branding right back here, Freedare. You got your branding right here. You can actually also attach a basket to. They've got mounting points for that if you decide you want to do that. The cable management on this bike is very nice. These cables are not going to get in your way whatsoever, and then they're routed right down through here and they go right into the frame. I hate it when wires and cables go down the bottom right here and are just zip tied. So that is a big positive for this bike. I've sat on this bike already and the seat, it's kind of squishy, but in my honest opinion, you're probably going to want to swap this seat out for something a little more comfortable because it feels like a rock. I'm not going to lie to you guys. This is an honest review. The top view of the bike, it's pretty cool looking, honestly. It looks very chunky and very thick. I don't know if you can tell. The frame is really thick, and so is that front fender. I mean, look at that. This is a beefy bike here. And you also get the locking grips, which I always like to see on a bike. Let's see how that wheel spins. Definitely kicks right up to 29. You get the 26x4 knobby Kenda fat tires. Very good for pretty much any terrain you're going to take this bike out on. But then also, speaking about the tires, right here, this is also a through axle. So you can see that axle is locked in place. That wheel is not going to come off. But I do really like these tires. Reputable brand when it comes to e-bike tires. Plus, another thing I think we should mention is that white line going around the tire. It looks, I don't even know what you'd call it. Is that like a retro look? Either way, it's unique and it looks pretty cool. Now we're going to take a quick look at how this thing looks with me sitting on it. I am 5'11 and a half, but I like to tell people I'm 6 foot tall. And there you guys go. Lowest level on the seat. I can't put both of my feet down flat on the ground, which isn't a big deal. This is probably a bike for a taller person because this seat goes up much higher than this. See, the seat goes up pretty high. I personally would not ever try to ride it this high. So if you're 7 foot or taller, you could probably easily ride and pedal this bike. And there you go. It's a dual headlight, so you got light there. Pretty nice headlight in my opinion. So when it comes to this bike, without the rear suspension and without a seat post suspension on here, it might not be the most comfortable ride, but it has the front suspension, which you can lock, but I don't see why anybody would ever lock their forks. It just doesn't make sense to me. Good amount of travel. Seat's uncomfortable, no rear suspension, no seat post suspension. Not a big deal though, because I rode this here and it's actually a pretty comfortable ride. After all, I have ridden bikes that have no suspension at all, and those are uncomfortable. I honestly picked the wrong time of day to do this video. The sun is literally about to set. If I missed anything or if you guys have any questions about the bike, drop a comment down below and I will answer those questions and get back to you. I will see you guys tomorrow for the test ride. And here we are, it is the next day. We've got the FE Freedare Saiga all ready to go. And just for a little size comparison, I like to show you guys what these bikes look like in a parking stall. This one's a pretty large bike. It's actually a pretty good size, not too big, not too small. But now we're gonna take a look at the app control, which is a pretty cool feature. I've been looking into it and it's a lot cooler than it sounds actually. So as you guys can see, we can connect right to the bike and then you can lock it, you can unlock it. You can also use the Find My Bike feature, which I'm actually not gonna show you guys my location because you know that's private, but it will show you exactly where your bike is. Then you've also got bike inspection, so it's going to tell you everything you need to know. It'll inspect your bike and all the important parts of it, so that way you know that your bike is in good condition. So when it comes to the theft protection on this bike, if you're just sitting somewhere and you got it locked and somebody tries to steal this thing, you're going to get a notification on your phone. You're going to be able to track it with GPS, so if somebody steals it and they drive away with it or something like that, you're going to know exactly where it is. I'm pretty sure this whole system is right here. I'm pretty sure this is the theft detection system and the GPS. And I also forgot to mention the other day that you can charge the battery right here. You can just keep it in the frame, no need to take it out, which is always a plus. But now we're going to hop on, we're going to go for a ride, and we're going to see what this bike is capable of. It's not too slow, it's not too quick, it's pretty average when it comes to the acceleration, just like most other bikes this style, this size. But I'm a fast boy. I like fast e-bikes. So let's just get the brake test out of the way, because I know that these brakes are going to do great, especially since they're hydraulic disc brakes. So we're going max speed now, coming up to not a stop sign, but all right, that works pretty good. So I can actually smell rubber. Let's see what we left. We hit the brakes right here. You can see the line going all the way up. So really good brakes. So now that we've got the brake test out of the way, we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna try pedaling it with the torque sensor. It actually feels pretty good so far. It's pretty smooth when it comes to this torque sensor. I really like torque sensors as opposed to cadence sensors because I like to actually be able to pedal if I want to pedal. And as you guys can see, I've got the seat up to a perfect height for me to pedal. We're up to, you can comfortably pedal at about 25 miles an hour. Once you get over that, then your feet are going pretty fast. So the torque sensor on this bike is good. I love torque sensors compared to cadence sensors because then you can actually pedal it. With a cadence sensor, all you gotta do is move your feet and then it'll go up to max speed. I have a feeling this bike, like most other 48 volt systems, is going to struggle when it comes to this hill climb test. And one thing I am noticing riding this is that this rear fender is really close. It's pretty much touching the frame here. So when you're riding, you can hear some rattling sounds or like vibrating of the fender. See, hear that? So I'm not a big fan of that, but it's not a big deal. I can deal with the sound. If it's a good performing bike, that is all that matters. So now we're gonna do our hill climb test, and most of our bikes average about 12 to 15 miles an hour going up this hill. So let's go ahead and let's give it a try. All right, up the hill we go. The vibrating gets less noticeable as you go up in speed a little bit more. Right now we're going 23. Let's see what we hit going up this hill, because this is an extremely steep hill. But so far we're powering up. We're going 20, 19, 18. And I love to see that. That right there is a great hill climb test. We're at the top now. And I think the reason for that fast speed on the hill climb, it's the Bafang rear hub motor. These Bafang motors are great. So considering this bike only has the front suspension, I'm not expecting it to be the most comfortable ride off-road, but we're gonna give it a try. Here's the trail. We just gotta make sure we get kind of a rolling start going down this trail, because these 48 volt e-bikes usually struggle when it comes to going uphill off-road. But this bike did great when it came to going up that hill on the road. Should be a little hill right here we can hit, do a little bit of pedal assist, help it get up. And with the pedal assist, we're able to make it up. You probably can't tell how steep that was from the action camera footage, but I mean, it's really not that steep. 48 volt bikes just do not perform super well when it comes to off-road inclines. But with these 26 inch by 4 inch fat knobby tires, it's doing great. It's actually really comfortable off-road. I thought this would be a lot less comfortable without rear suspension, but it's actually really comfortable. I'm pleasantly surprised. If the lack of rear suspension on this bike is something that you guys are worried about, honestly, at this point, I wouldn't even worry about it. There's more uncomfortable bikes out there on the market. I mean, you can feel it because it doesn't absorb all the bumps you're going over. If you get a seat post with suspension, I think you'll be just fine on this bike. We would love to have rear suspension, but we don't. And that's okay, because this bike has so much more to offer when it comes to features and specs. The Bafang rear hub motor, the app control, theft protection, all that stuff is a huge plus. Now we're just gonna go and cruise around a little bit, put it to the test. And of course we do have to hit our top speed test, but this thing does top out at 28. So the top speed is gonna be 28. Oh yeah. Going down dips like this, you can definitely tell the rear suspension is not there, but that's all right. At least we got the front and the rear fenders, because the ground is a little bit wet. And if we didn't have those fenders, we would be all wet. As you guys can see, it performs great, especially going up that hill. Most 48 volt bikes struggle to go up hills like that, because that's a very very steep hill. I really like the rear rack on here, so that way you can put a basket on here or something like that, and you can actually go to the store and go and do stuff and put stuff in there. I like how the batteries are removable, very easy to charge right here. But this bike also just looks super cool. I mean, look at that. People are going to be looking at you when you're riding around on this thing. The 26x4 knobby Kenda fat tires are also a welcome addition to this bike, as well as the hydraulic braking system. Very powerful brakes on this bike, which I think is essential for e-bikes, especially since they go so fast. But now we're just gonna ride around like the average person would. Who do I think this bike is for? I think this bike is for people that want a solid commuter. This thing would be great for college students, people that want to commute to work, people that want to go to the store and stuff like that, or even just ride around for fun. E-bikes like this are enjoyable to ride around, and my friend even said when I took him out on an e-bike, he said that it felt therapeutic, and I completely agree with that. I love e-bikes, I'm passionate about them, and I want to share my passion with the world. So my passions are outdoor adventures and electric bikes / vehicles. I would love to try out really any electric vehicles. I would even try out a unicycle, electric scooter, electric bike, you name it. I really like the idea that electric vehicles are just much better for the environment. Look over our shoulder. Are we gonna hit a green? Are we gonna hit a green? Yeah, we're gonna hit a green. Awesome. Because this thing doesn't have fast acceleration, so I don't want to have to stop at the red light. So far, the ride on this is very comfortable. I like how it's got the locking grips. Those things aren't twisting around on you when you're riding around. The display is very easy to read. I'm sure you guys can see that very easily. 28, you got that power meter on the bottom. You've got, you know, your trip. You've got your average speed, your max speed down there that you can change, but I usually don't even look at that stuff. Brake test. Good brakes. Very good brakes on these Tektro hydraulic brakes. No rear suspension, but we're gonna send it. Oh yeah. It actually felt really good going off that curb right there without any rear suspension. I'm actually pretty surprised. Now, let's test it out just going down. You can definitely tell there's no rear suspension when you go up and down the curbs. It's not too bad. It's not a deal breaker if you ask me. So if you're worried about the lack of rear suspension, just get a suspension seat post. So we've been riding this thing around for a while now, and honestly, I was worried about the lack of rear suspension, but it actually rides very nice, and it's a very smooth, comfortable ride. I know in the beginning I mentioned that the seat is a rock. After you break it in a little bit, it's actually a lot more comfortable. I actually couldn't really notice how hard it was, but I would still switch it out personally. It's not the worst seat, but it's also not the best seat. Now we're gonna go ahead, do our 0 to 20 acceleration test. One other thing we forgot to take a look at was our top speed. We hit 34 miles an hour going down that hill earlier, and this display is accurate because going down that hill the display said we want 34. On here it said we want 34. 3, 2, 1. $12, 15, 17, 18, 19, 20. That took us 12 seconds. But I think being able to go quick and fast, and that we can avoid certain situations, that's gonna keep you safe. So that's why I personally like 52 volt systems when it comes to commuter style, typical fat tire e-bikes like this. But if it was up to me, I would have a 60 volt or a 72 volt system. There's honestly something that I just love about riding through a grass field on an e-bike. Just gonna max it out. Let's see how fast we can go through this field. Looks like we're going about 19. See, something like that, you can feel that lack of rear suspension, but it's not like horrible. So now we're going to stop and we're going to talk about this bike, and I'm going to give you guys my honest opinion on what I think about it. The FE Freedare Saiga is a great bike. Yes, in the beginning, I was a little bit skeptical with the lack of rear suspension and not even having a seat post suspension, but it's a very comfortable ride, and I was pleasantly surprised to see just how comfortable it was and how nice it was to ride around with. The front suspension is very cushy and very nice, and it's got the Bafang rear hub motor. I wish it had a twist throttle and a few other things, but that's my personal preference. I think this e-bike is great for most people that are in the market for a 48 volt e-bike for commuting, going to work, going to school, you name it. This is going to be a great option, especially if you get that rear rack with it. But thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you FE Freedare for sending over this e-bike for us to review on the channel. If you do want to pick one up for yourselves or check it out, I'll have links down in the description and pinned down in the comments. And I think this bike is a great bike. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.